Welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And when there's no room left in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Yes.
And for today, for our 100th episode, me and Bobby will return from our deepest, darkest hell to come back on Earth to celebrate with you minions.
Minions, two foul creatures coming back to spread hate.
Yeah, we've come straight on in with offending you, our viewers. Yeah. So, if you all leave right now, that's fine. This is the episode when we're just going to get cancelled completely.
Yeah, this is it. The next 100 episodes were just going to be horrible to everybody who listens to us.
We're literally going to see our viewers just disappear one by one until we get rid of you all.
That's the ultimate goal of the podcast, isn't it?
That's why we started a podcast, to mercilessly beat down our audience until they give in. But we've realised over 100 episodes that actually you want the beating.
You want the beating, yeah.
You've got that kink.
Yeah.
And we're already straight in.
We're straight in.
So, Bobby, 100 episodes.
Yeah, it's the big 100. We've been I don't know how long exactly we've been doing the podcast for, but we've had a couple of breaks here and there, and we are firing back with the absolute fucking classic that is Dawn of the Dead from George A. Romero, 1978. We were trying to think of a film that has the gravitas for a 100th episode.
We absolutely we discussed many different films, many different ways to approach. We said we wanted to do something big for our 100th, and you might, if you're underwhelmed, well, we are meant to talk about a film. That's kind of the main point of our podcast. Yeah. So, Dawn of the Dead seemed like the peak of what we could talk about, and the fact that we never got round to it seemed kind of mad.
Yeah, surprising, isn't it?
We've done all of the Zack Snyder of the Deads, but we never got round to doing the OG. We haven't done any of Romero's.
No.
We've talked about them.
Yeah, we talked about them, and we talked about it in our first ever episode. I mentioned my probably favourite horror moment is, and one of the moments that made me love horror, was when I was watching WWF back then, 97, 98, maybe 99, and my brothers, whilst it was an advert break, switched to the classic movies. Night of the Living Dead was on, and then they left the room, and I was 7 or 8, and I watched it and I was absolutely terrified. And we spoke about doing Night of the Living Dead and trying to do the 3 films, but we never actually got around to planning it. So we thought, for the big 100,
we'll do it out of order.
Yeah, we'll do it out of order, and we'll start with the Granddaddy, because this is probably the films, this is probably the most acclaimed, and this is the one that people often put up at the top, don't they? Yeah,
well, this is pretty much this is pretty much the greatest zombie film of all time, according to most people. And most people put this one as the greatest of the Dawn of the Dead of all of Romero's.
Yeah.
Obviously, sticking to the main original Night, Dawn, and Day are the main ones that get that kind of acclaim. The ones that have come after that from Romero, not so much. Yeah, they're of a mixed acquired taste. Some of them, there's Land, there's Diary.
I remember Land is okay.
I don't. I've only seen it once, to be fair, and I think when I saw it, Land is weirdly enough the first one I think I ever saw of any of them. So I don't know if I have a distaste for Land because when I watched it. This is when I was like a teenager or so, younger. Yeah. Literally probably when it came out around 2005, I think it was.
Something like that, yeah.
I remember not really liking it. But then again, that could be because I was expecting a different kind of zombie film. And I can't really remember as much social context in that one, though, as there is in the earlier stuff.
There's some, but it's a bit more on the nose in terms of like kind of rich and poor divide, mega corporations, that sort of stuff. I think the concern, or one of the problems with Land of the Dead and zombie movies in the post 28 Days Later landscape is we go from shuffling slow zombies to fast moving runners and that kind of stuff. So I always felt Land struggled with that because the scariness of zombies had completely changed.
It also had the bad thing is it came out the year after the Dawn of the Dead remake, which was a big hit and was faster zombies.
And a highly different film to Land of the Dead.
Yes, so yeah, we were talking about this before, that yes, we have done the remake of Dawn of the Dead. We both really enjoy the remake of Dawn of the Dead. And to be honest, it wasn't the first time I watched the original Dawn of the Dead. I remember thinking that it was different, and this time again watching it, and I've seen, as we've said, we've both seen like several different versions of this film that are out there. But the remake, I this time it really reflected in my brain just how insanely, I think, like, apart from basically the setting, I think majority of how this whole film plays out is a completely different story, it goes in a completely different direction, apart from the fact that obviously the stuff about being in the mall and how they survive and live in the mall.
Yeah, that's
pretty much it.
Yeah, it's the main.
The way that things happen, the way they get there, the protagonist, all of those kind of main parts, the main like problems that appear and how they try to get away and things like that, all completely different.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And rewatching this, I get this quite. I don't know if you've kind of noticed this, but when you watch in films for enjoyment, you view them differently when you watch them with kind of that analytical eye.
Yeah.
So I noticed that this time I picked up more stuff to do with the world building and how it actually kind of relays into the trilogy of the Dead. I mean, we'll get to that when we get to it. But as always, before we kind of start, I will do the classic plug. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope that you've enjoyed all of the episodes, and you're celebrating 100 episodes with us. As always, please remember to check that subscribe button. I've been harping on about it recently, but we're nearly at 100 followers on Spotify and 50 on Apple Podcasts, which is pretty fucking class. Yeah. So just remember to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. So just before we kind of get into the film, because you mentioned that there are several different cuts. So you have the theatrical cut, you have the director's cut, there's the Argento cut, and then I think there's one called the alternate cut, which I heard about. But for context, we're talking about the theatrical cut. So we're saying if you went to see it opening night in 1978, that's what we're talking about.
This is the version you would have seen. Yeah. Whereas at several other places, even when it was like first released, they were still doing like alternative. Like I believe, like when the first release of this film was at Cannes Festival, and that one was the director's cut, was the actual one, because that one is the longer cut. And then the shortest of the cuts is the Argento cut, is actually the shortest, where he's cut out a few of the more humorous elements of the film. And then the theatrical cut, which is the middling one of the two. But I think despite prior like belief and stuff like that, even though there is the director's cut, I believe Romero does believe the theatrical cut is the better cut.
Maybe
he is the better of the ones or things like that. Whereas obviously Argento, I'm sure, probably loves his cut.
Probably, yeah.
The film, because we like I talked about that before with you about the that we were reading about in our research of it. It said about how basically Dario Argento, who we've done some recent stuff on, like Suspiria and stuff like that, and you've been on a proper kick of watching through his films.
I'm a big fan.
He was a huge supporter of making this film, which you'd think after Night of the Living Dead kind of reinvented, like basically invented or reinvented how you looked at zombies or things like that, and was seen as such a hit. Although obviously that was made in quite an independent way, and that's why to this day you can find Night of the Living Dead and like anyone can basically take copies because it's out of the public, it's in the public domain.
Yeah.
So anyone could basically make any. That's why there's a million Night of the Living Dead style film, because that anyone can remake it. You can go and remake it right now if you want to. I wouldn't.
Maybe we should.
Because it's been done to death.
Maybe we should do our own version. Yeah, it's been beaten to shit death. Maybe we should do our own version. To celebrate.
You need an angle. What is it? Cats of the Living Dead.
Cats of the Living Dead. Dong of the Living Dead, where everybody's just naked, like the Fulci cut. Everyone's just hanging dong.
Yeah, that could work. We'll talk.
Yeah, we'll talk.
So you'd think it was that, but actually Romero actually had a hard time trying to make Dawn of the Dead made, kind of thing. He had lots of supporters and stuff like that, but he didn't actually, like, the film itself didn't have fuck all budget.
Yeah.
And Dario Argento is part of the reason that it had some kind of a budget, because he was a big, like, you need to do another one, you need to make more of these, where Romero was thinking about going in a different direction, away from what he'd done, leaving Night of the Living Dead as Night of the Living Dead kind of thing. I don't think it was always inspired, like, I think he had ideas in his head, but he'd never thought to whether actually fully that to be his career, because obviously this kind of became the defining part of Romero's life.
Pretty much,
you know, the zombie is kind of, he is that master of this part of the genre.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Argento kind of offered him somewhere to stay in Rome, and was like it's even said that he maybe even helped with some of the writing and things like that. It's kind of thrown out there. And on top of that, he helped with getting like financiers and stuff like that. And so that's why, because it seems really weird. You've got like Romero, this American filmmaker, and then Argento, who seems to have this odd kind of fascination, and who's done these cuts of, like, his cut of this film.
Yeah.
And it's because he helped to get there, and all he asked for was the European rights to cut and edit it, which is why we have the Argento cut, or also known as Zombie.
Yeah.
Like, but they are, if you've looked at them, and we will do, I think at some point we'll probably do Zombie or Dawn of the Dead Alternative. Even though it's basically the same film, there are a lot of darker differences, because he preferred the darker tone, which we were talking about, because we were like, you said about how Argento has like eccentricities, and his films are not, they're not exactly like plain straightforward kind of darker, purely darker film, even though they have sometimes got like a darker like tone.
Yeah, they quite often have quite dark material and tone, but just this there's a unique strangeness about them and the characters. Like I recently watched Deep Red, which is a film he did before Suspiria, I think. And yet again, it's a very weird and eccentric film. Like, there's all sorts of strange characters who kind of have that melodrama, or slightly feel like they're not really grounded and very real, but then they're not too over the top that it's kind of comic.
Yeah, that was the thing we said, like, even like we've say like Suspiria and stuff like that, there were eccentricities that were weird, strange, that made you kind of in this kind of like, should I be laughing at this character? I'm not sure if I should be. But we did say, like, one thing is, like, the theoretical Romero Dawn of the Dead has actually more humour. When we watched it, you said this time you found there was more humour, and I was just like, and to be fair, I don't actually think Argento necessarily uses humour, and that's kind of why they said that he maybe cut a lot of that out from his version. And that's the main difference between his, is that he kind of made it darker and he included more of the Goblin soundtrack. Yeah,
which is strange, because I didn't realise that Goblin did some of the soundtrack for this as well.
Yeah.
Which gives it is a very, like, it's a lot more playful than I remember. And when you compare it, this is what I mean about comparing it and contrasting it to the rest of, like, the trilogy of the Dead. Night of the Living Dead is still very... It's quite straight-laced, I feel.
Yeah.
This film has a bit more fun elements to it, and a bit more of these strange character, human moments. And then you get to Day of the Dead, which is very nihilistic.
Yeah. Well, I say yes. The big shocker of me is that I've not watched Day of the Dead.
I loved it.
I know parts, and I think I basically know what happens in Day of the Dead. And I thought it's another one that I'd kind of tricked myself into watching. And then as I was like looking into this a little bit more, Dawn of the Dead, I was like looking into parts of it. I was like, I don't think I've ever actually watched it. I just know some of the key stuff that happens in the film. So I've kind of made myself believe. So it was like my brain is like, I know what happens at dawn. I know at night. I know what George A. Romero's like. I can invent the film in my head. So in my head somewhere there's a cut. There's my cut of Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, it's your cut.
My cut of Day of the Dead.
The Evo cut.
Yeah, where I've just made up the film myself. It exists in my brain only.
Yeah.
No one else can see it. But yeah. So there's the shocker. I think I've watched every of the Dead film except Day,
which is
some
strange.
people believe is the best as well.
I think it is my favourite. I think Dawn is probably the best. I think Day is my favourite, and Day is very interesting in terms of the production. I won't go into like massive detail. I'll do it when we cover it, but effectively, it was originally supposed to be like a $15-20 million budget or something like that. Then got massively reduced, so he had to rewrite the whole thing, which is why it's set in a bunker for large parts of it. When originally it was like the story was a lot grander. It was set on this strange island, and everybody online is saying, "Well, they should have." I wish we'd have seen the original cut, and Romero said he wished he'd have made it. And then I found the script or the breakdown of the script, and it sounded real shit. To be honest, so I think the nihilistic, weird tone that we got is better. But yeah, kind of back to Dawn of the Dead. Even the theatrical cut is surprisingly long. It's 2 hours and 17 minutes.
Yeah.
It always takes me off guard,
Yeah, it is a long film. You forget how much goes through. In your head, you feel like you're like, well, how far can you stretch out a film where basically a bunch of people go to a mall, live, and then it's all going to go. It's going to go shits up. Shits up.
It's going to go shits up.
It's going to go shits up. Yeah, that's the same.
Yeah,
it's all going to go wrong. So It is an odd one, but I always forget how much actually happens before they even get to the mall.
Yes.
I forget that. I always forget the TV studio opening.
Same here.
Every time I watch it, yeah. I remember the mall, and I do remember them travelling, because I remember like a helicopter part, but I always forget that it starts off in a TV studio. And the TV studio plays a large part, and I think what makes this such a superior than many others is the fact that there's a large part of this film that kind of proves this is definitely one of those, just like Night of the Living Dead did, that not only is it humans that are a major part of the problem of why the decay is happening, but this TV studio where you've got these presenters who are basically just people already know that something is going wrong across the country, and you've got these guys who are just diplomatically just kind of talking out the theological and the representation and the political ways in which this is destroying the world, and you're kind of looking on at them with these two guys just going like, so it's the end of the world, people are literally going for that, people are trying to find their way out of this TV studio, and you guys are just sat here just talking about the philosophy of everything. And it's both being like, you can see the point that he's trying to make it, and at the same time you're also thinking to yourself, like, you guys are part of the problem, that you have to break the whole world down into this, like, and you think that thinking in this kind of political philosophical way is something that's going to actually help the world, where it's like, at this point in time, you ain't doing shit. You ain't helping shit. I didn't do shit.
And it's still relevant, to be honest, man. Because like, you could totally buy this happening today. If something like this kicked off, people would find a way of weaponizing it or reporting on it, trying to get something, some content out of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. BuzzFeed or whatever will have TikToks going down the street of like, look, I found my first zombie. Like Pokemon Go for zombies. Like, find your first zombie, everyone.
And then somebody would be like, no, it's fake news. Like, these aren't real. Have you seen it?
Trump will be there. Trump will be there with 2 machine guns in his hand, going, "This is fake news. There's no zombies," and he's just like blasting his way for a crowd of zombies, just like.
But one thing I do really like about the opening is it sets the rules straight off, because they're basically with Night of the Living Dead, which is very much, this shit is just kicking off. Like, it's literally like minutes into it, hours into it. They have to learn the rules, they have to find ways to kill them. They don't even know what they are. And then Dawn of the Dead is very much maybe like the first day, 2 days, where things are still functioning, things are still frantic, and we get the rules straight off, like, they're undead, shoot them in the head, that's the only way to destroy them. So I think in terms of like setting the tone and establishing the ground rules, it's right there in the first 5-10 minutes, and then we get a couple more features of this TV, which I think plays into it quite well, because they're talking about like how they're not human anymore, how some people are still clinging on, hoping that they're going to be better. Some people are still thinking that they're humans and they need to respect them.
Yeah,
and it's really interesting.
It's that, and again, I think it is that, and this is what makes Romero's work so more interesting, because it does have that kind of social kind of view of the world, of like, how's it actually affecting them on a human level? But also how's it affecting them on like a political or economic level? He's thinking of how the world would actually work in this, and I think he was one of the first to think of it in that way, instead of it just being a monster that's just chasing after someone. You know what I mean? Or just, this creature's coming after you kind of thing. He's really thinking about like, okay, so how would people be thinking? There are going to be some people out there who are thinking, oh, well, but what if they're not changed, or what if they're just trying to help us, or what if they're trying to make it seem in the kind way? And then obviously you've got the religious context of like, oh, maybe this is a sign from above, and and you've got all these different levels of like people trying to talk out about it, and then you've got the people in the, kind of more of the protagonists who are more like, okay, no, we just need to do something.
We just need to get out.
Like, everyone else is too busy talking or chatting about it, or like, trying to debate which is the best way. And in the middle of that, you've kind of got the protagonists, the ones who you feel more likely have got some chance by going, no, we just need to find a way out.
We need to find a way out.
We need to get to helicopter, we need to get a signal out there, we need to tell people that they just need to fucking get out of the way. Get away from them, because this is not going well. So I do think that that's a really interesting part that he brings across the film, and it obviously it plays out throughout all of his trilogy of them, but especially in this one, I think this is why this one seems as the higher up one, because I think the social commentary, the consumerist kind of part, and the way the world comes to an end, and it's not so much chosen in this one, but it is a case of like, at the end of the world, you go to a mall. You know what I mean? You go to shopping, and then, but it's the fact that you've got that, but also that people find a freedom, and they actually find some, oddly, in this dark time, they find happiness in that one place, and it's like an escape.
Well, they mentioned that they're like they're going on instinct and what they used to do, and then that is another theme that comes back in Land of the Dead. When people have been zombified for so long that they're just going on instinct, like you get the main zombie, I can't remember what they call it. I think they call him like Big Daddy or something, but he's doing like the petrol pump, and then but to nobody there, like the bell goes and he just does it. I think there's like a waitress, there's a butcher, and it's almost like it's just reverting to like base instinct. And I get it, like this time, especially in America, was when a lot of shopping malls were opening up, and it was moving away from that
smaller town,
small town shops.
The Night of the Living Dead is almost that small town. Like, what happens when something like this comes to this small little village or out in the middle of nowhere? That one's much more, whereas this one is like peak in the centre of a city, like, as you've got, say, like when they do go and you've got the helicopter going over and you can see the city, and it does show certain shots of like, like the army or the police or things like that are kind of trying to keep things away or blocking places, and you get this bigger landscape that suddenly goes from like night, which is just one set location, one small rural location, and now
isolated.
We're into
and now we're into the effects on,
and it's just like
society.
And it is just like, what is the constant flow, like whenever it's surrounded, what would happen in those areas where it's just like everywhere? Like, if you could be rural and you could still die, then what are your chances in the middle of somewhere that's so highly populated?
And going on that, because I mean, there is the apartment block or the block of flats that we'll go back to, but that bit where they're flying away in the helicopter, and we do see the army, but we also see what is effectively, for lack of a better term, like a bunch of rednecks like getting the shotguns and getting the hunting rifles and going out and fighting it.
Yeah.
The bit that I love about this in terms of world building is that you know that this is like people trying to fight back and people thinking, well, this is something we can just like blast our way through and we'll be fine.
And what my gun and start blasting.
Get my gun and start blasting. And what I think is, and you know, is kind of mental is when you know how Day of the Dead goes.
Yeah.
Where they say at the start of Day of the Dead that for every one human left on Earth, there's 250,000 zombies. And it's you know that like this is the start, this is Dawn of the Dead, but then you know that the dead win. All of these people who go out and try and fight it is just pointless. You know, they should have been holding up, they should have been trying to survive. And it's just it's a bit of world building that just hit me a bit more this time, knowing the context of where it goes.
I was going to say the fact that they are the idea that you can kind of fight that and things like that and can't like get around it, like not accepting it, but also not constantly like battling against it. The idea that it's going to keep going and going, and also I think with it, considering this is the United States that it's mainly focused on, there's definitely a little bit of about the whole gun argument in there. The idea that they think that gun is the answer to pretty much all of their problems. All they need to do is take that out and just like we'll just shoot the shit out of them. Which obviously at the end of say Night of the Living Dead, obviously you get the idea that the rural kind of areas is kind of actually they managed to take control back by the end of that one because it is a smaller population, so any of the forces they have are able to kind of control it for a certain amount of time.
That's it, for a certain amount of time.
That's what I mean. That's until the larger urban population starts to spread to the rural and then they're fucked. So you know it's only for a certain amount of time, but also that some of them did try to, like, the opposite, and it is the opposites you've got, like in Night of the Living Dead, it doesn't work out for them, no, but they try to protect themselves in one place. They try to go away from the zombies, but sadly they're already so surrounded even at the start of the film. There's already so many out there kind of thing that they can't do. So you know it's kind of a losing battle in that situation. But in this one, you've got the people literally leaving a place that could be somewhat, they thought, secure. There were no zombies at the start of the film actually that much like around them until they fly off in a helicopter and start going to the other part. And then obviously it starts to get worse and worse, like as they go to other parts of the buildings and stuff like that. That's when they really see the chaos. When they get over and we see more of the. Well, there was one thing I can't remember. It is SWAT.
Yeah,
they're a SWAT team.
Because I always forget about that
because they talk about them like they're the rebels or like they're the villains. Sometimes they talk about those like teams and stuff. Like you're the guys that are like. Maybe like taking the charge, like you're not like the army, you're not. I think you're almost just like taking things for yourself, as if they're like SWAT, but they've also kind of gone away from the moral code of like they're here taking them out for people, but they're not really following the rules that have been like set for anymore. Maybe
because I mean you have that scene where they're going into the the apartment building.
It's like a low income kind of building, isn't it? Yeah.
Which it's a clear choice to make it full of minorities. And you've got that. One thing that I always get shocked about is just how racist that one dude is. Like there's one police officer who just like his first line is just racist, and then they fight off some I don't know whether they're like drug dealers or whether they're just people who are defending it. Because the first time I watched this,
some of them might have some of them have got like froze, and some of them have got like rasta kind of things.
It's really weird. Because the first time I watched this, I thought, oh, this is like a drug bust, and they go in, and then they realise there's a zombie outbreak. Because it looks very much like a SWAT team going into like a drug den. However, when I watched it back, like you were saying, I was thinking, are they, are the people in this housing block keeping the zombies because they think they're going to get better? So this team are like, no, they're in there and are going in to exterminate them. And then that racist dude just goes in and starts just blasting everyone. Like, he's just kicking doors down, shooting humans. And then I love when his head gets blown up. And he blows somebody's head up.
I love this whole, like, I think it's this opening in that part of it, in the housing project, is one of the most effective parts of the film. It's like, not only is it action-packed, but it's also, I just find it really interesting, the different, like, cops and the different SWAT officers you've got and their different approaches to this. Like, you've got obviously
Roger.
the big Roger's obviously our main like, and it is our protagonist for part of the film. But
Peter,
the guys, I can't remember what the
Ken Foray. Peter.
It says here, Wooly is his name, a brutal and racist officer.
Oh, yeah.
Because he goes fucking off the rails. He just fucking goes. Like, the second he sees the dead, he's racist. But then the second he sees the dead, he's like, well, fuck them all.
Yeah,
yeah. It says here, the idea is meant to be actually that they are going to the black and Latino tenants who are defying martial law of delivering the dead to the National Guard, so they're not handing them over. And I think that relates to when they get to the basement and they get the minister, the priest, whatever you want to call him, and when you see that scene, there is an implication that he's the one that's actually been almost like telling them that no, the dead, like, he comes out like as if he was trying to protect them. Yeah. As is like, you need to look after them. Like, he doesn't fully believe, from the religious side, he doesn't fully believe yet that they are gone. He believes if they're still alive and they're still coming around us, then they should still be protected.
They're still human.
It feels like maybe that whole building is almost listening to the guy in the basement.
Yeah, maybe.
It's like he's the big boss, but he's not the big boss because he's a one-legged
priest
who's barely surviving to like walk across the roof.
Yeah.
And that's
well, I think that there's a line where Ken Foray's Peter, and I think Ken Foray is a really good leading man in this.
Oh yeah.
And he says people still believe there's respect in dying.
Yeah.
And it's a very it's a very interesting contrast to something that happens later, which we'll discuss about when we get there. But that is it. It's this idea of it, and now I've read that it puts things a lot more into context of the actual film.
Yeah.
But we get our first zombie bite then as well, as we get like the mustached zombie.
Yeah.
One thing I love about all of the zombies in this is just how 70s they look,
and
I still find, I mean, like, practically speaking, yes, a running zombie is much more terrifying, but I think on camera, I think that slow-moving zombies just work so much better. I think you get more tension as opposed to just having a chase. You know,
I think people. I always feel like people underestimate. I mean, running zombies are fine, but I also always find that something with running zombies is it starts to get a little bit. I don't know. It's just a bit. It's just like the second you see them, it's like, right, they're going to run towards you, and it starts to kind of get a bit the same. Whereas I always find with slow moving one, it's the fact that, like, 1 second, yes, they're walking towards you, but the next is like, where the fuck did they go?
Yeah,
and there's much more of that suspension tension with this slow moving zombie.
Yeah,
and much more of the idea of, you like, they're so focused on the snowman, but it's like, oh, he's far away. They don't always pay attention. It's like, we've got time for that one. Get that one, and then it's like, but by the time you saw those ones, you forgot that one's come and got you.
And there's more just coming.
And there's just more ways I think you can play with it. Whereas I think with fast moving, it's kind of like, well, that's it. They're going to corner you.
We need to have a chase.
Yeah,
that's kind of what we can really do.
And that's why, like, certain things, like say the Dawn of the Dead remake or 20 Days Later or things like that. There is a certain parts of them, like, yes, they do some fantastic different ways, but there are a little bit of point when you're like, okay, so we're being chased again by the zombies.
Yeah.
And it's not as much of that suspense sometimes at times. Not so much 28 Days Later, that's got some
that's
fantastic
fucking class.
Yeah, it's a class. But I'm just saying, but that was the first one to really try it. But then, even then, theirs is not even just your standard running. Theirs is a rage of theirs has the extra detail of just how fucking mad those creatures are. They're fucking rabid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's a lot of the depth. There is a lot of possibly kind of, you're wondering about race of some of these. You've got obviously what we say is blue, but meant to be grey.
Yeah.
Because Savini painted them to be grey, but on screen they came across with a tint of a blue tint. So people always assume they're blue, as in, like, as if, like, if you die, your lips start to go, like that. When he actually related it to Night of the Living Dead, which had no colour.
Yeah.
So Night of the Living Dead, they were grey because it was black and white. So he
Yeah.
liked the idea of keeping them as a grey zombie. And then he was like, people don't really question it, but yeah, in my mind, they were meant to be like grey.
Yeah.
Then with some of them, he didn't really do the lips and stuff. So it kind of gets a bit of a like, it's like grey with then pink lips.
Yeah,
it's like
weird.
a little bit of time. There are some of them like there's like I don't know what you'd call him, like a Maharaja or whatever you call like the kind of the bold guys. There's one
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, that's the one. And he's like grey, and then just these beautiful pink lips.
Beautiful, yeah, succulent.
Just
pink
there,
lips.
like I'm still alive for the lipping.
Yeah. But
that's when Peter gets some ideas.
But that first zombie bite, and a lot is really cool.
Yeah.
And I found like a lot of the gore still, for the most part, looks pretty good.
Oh yeah, it does stand out. I mean, like the fact that Savini's effects are pretty great in this film, and the fact that they, as I said earlier about the budget, the fact that he had like fuck all budget, and most of it had to be like him and his mate doing half of this stuff, like throwing themselves off of stuff or pulling stuff or just basically doing, and that's why sometimes they do play well into the like. They use things like the clothing to help them kind of mask it. So underneath they could have had like blood packs and stuff like that, but it still works because all it has to look like is the tearing of that, and then you see so much blood gushing out that you don't even really pay attention to if there's any like parts. And obviously later on we do get more like flesh pulling and stuff like that. Obviously,
which is awesome.
Especially like towards the end with like the biking gang. There's loads of that kind of stuff. But but yeah, all of those little parts, like just that kind of the way that he does the pop of the blood and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just like all that in your face, like I love all of the practical that comes into this film.
Yeah, and a lot of the zombies look pretty cool as well, because I mean it's very early, so you don't expect people to be quite. Day of the Dead has some great looking zombies, but by then that's like a few years down the line. So people are rotting, people have died a lot more violently, and obviously effects have gotten better. But you get some cool looking zombies such as the classic one that's on the poster with the checked shirt that's kind of got like half its face mauled a little bit. You've got the Hare Krishna one, which is a fun little nod. You've got like one which has like half a leg or something like that in the apartment block.
Yeah.
So you've got like a range of ones that you can tell have been clearly mauled and had more vicious deaths, and then ones that do have like a bit more of like an extra look to them, like they're just an extra to bump the crowd up, but it looks good.
Well, that's the other thing is like obviously this is a time when to have a crowd like that you needed to literally have a crowd of people. So to get extras to come and work on your film, when you haven't got a budget to like pay them, it's just mad that he managed to gather so many people together. Like he had like army and police forces that just agreed to come in their outfit, in their uniforms, so he could film those scenes because he didn't have the money to get hiring people to be in costumes and do costumes for that. So he literally got like people like that. So like the fact that he managed to pull off what feels like such a grand scale,
because it feels much grander in scale than Night. Obviously it's supposed to, but it feels like that as well. We move through quite a lot of different locations. We have a lot more extras and side characters that kind of boost it.
If you just think of £640,000 to make this film was the budget. 640. That's fuck all. I know this is 70. This is the late 70s.
Well, this is the same year they made Halloween.
Yeah,
Halloween was on what 100,000, 150,000. I
think something like that. Yeah. So
and that's a real small budget.
But think about one of our more recent episodes, like Fright Night in the the 80s. But that was 7 million.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? Like, and they did impressive stuff with that, absolutely. Yes, they did. But it's still like the fact that he managed to pull this off with that low of a budget
is insane.
Yeah, it's mad.
And it shows how it goes to speaks to the level of the filmmaking of Romero as well. The proper commitment. Like I think I saw this in a documentary about it, but the mall was still operational. So during the day it would be open for business, and it was at night that they would have to film everything, and they'd have to film and then clean everything up ready for it to open the next day and do that all over again.
Because even things like there's they go into the gun shop in there, and there wasn't a gun shop. so they had to put together and
Yeah.
build a whole gun shop in there because I don't know. I think when Romero wrote it, he just assumed everyone's got
a gun shop.
but they didn't actually have one in the one they chose. So they had to put together, like do all the things, lay out all the props and stuff, to then take it all away the same night in order to get it ready and put the shop back together. So that's fucking insane. Like to have to do all of that in one night and be like, here's your shop back. Like it's like, why are there guns on my wall?
Yeah, guns.
Why do we keep finding guns in our shop? Yeah, we didn't know where to put them, so we just put them in your cupboard.
And a guy just
guns popping out all the time.
Yeah,
it's popping off in here. Children walking up it like it's a toy store.
Because it's a toy store.
I'd like this AK, please.
Yeah, just put him like lock and then load it onto the back of someone's head.
Sorry, you can't have that.
Yeah,
want a bet?
Yeah, he's saying. And then I think we also get, there's like a scene where they land in the mall and then they realise that they need to start getting supplies, so we get like quite a because they have to stop off. They have to stop off to kind of. They need to find some fuel, don't they? Yeah,
because it's already running low on fuel. Which obviously then that question comes in because they only get a certain amount of fuel, and then obviously that's another reason why they're like, well, we don't know if we've even got enough fuel to get anywhere.
Yeah,
which comes up again right at the end of the film. Like,
which is great.
We're just gonna have to see, but because that's when it has the when Ken Free's Steven, is it?
Flyboy.
No, so it's Peter. Sorry, Peter.
I got their names
I keep
as well.
mixing them up. Yeah, Peter goes inside of the garage and doesn't he get like rushed by some kids?
Kid zombies.
And that's one thing people point to is like people always say obviously certain ones were the first ones to haven't run. The kids run at him.
Yeah,
the kids were one of the first instances of a running zombie. Because the kids leg it towards Peter and kind of jump on him. And he has that kind of little lob about. Toss the kids. Lob them against the walls and stuff like that. Fighting the kids and stuff like that. When you wonder whether he's getting the jump, because obviously while that's all happening, he's obviously got Stephen outside with what's her name?
Roger. I can't remember the woman's name.
Not Roger. It's Fran. Which, and again on here it says pregnant, and I never remember that as a part of the story. I always
they mention it. They mention it, and then she's sick in the toilet, and I think Stephen. I
just thought she was just being sick because like this is all fucking scary as shit. Like I completely missed the lines about her being pregnant.
Yeah, they mention that.
Because I even look at Stephen and her at first, like before they actually get to the mall and they're like properly together. I keep looking at Stephen like they're kind of like they might be together or they're not together. Like I'm not even sure. She kind of looks like she'd like a piece of that Peter.
Yeah, she does look like she's.
You don't want a bit of that Ken Foray.
Yeah, he was a tall, handsome man.
He absolutely was. So I was looking at that girl like, did she want? But no, apparently they were together. Stephen, I can't help but look at. Every time I look at him, I think Hugh Laurie.
I get it. Yeah, he's got that kind of.
I keep thinking he's got that Hugh Laurie look to him, and he's like that kind of tall kind of thing. Because I'd say Stephen's a character that I feel like I don't like. Out of all the other ones, he'd be my like least favourite of them. He comes across a bit of a. I don't know. I feel like he comes across like he's all right at certain parts, but he comes across as a bit of a dick to start with. I think because he's in such a rush to get out. And he's trying to force his way, but
he's like we can't fucking. I
felt like he built later in the film towards as it kind of goes on when it's just them together.
Well, I think the film doesn't really have so much as character arcs. Like we don't get massive changes within people. Like Peter learns how to not Peter, sorry. I always confuse their names. Stephen learns how to shoot a gun, and get better at it, but nobody really has any proper character development, character arcs.
No,
because they develop
it's just little things.
It's very much how they survive.
Stephen and Fran start to cope with it together by getting closer, again, like to each other. When at first they seem like I'm not saying that, but that's why I felt like there was a little bit of a separation in some way, that they weren't so, but they felt like they were closer. Roger and Peter, obviously, their friendship seems to get real, like really strong.
The boys.
They start to be like real, which is one of the most fun parts of the film.
Yeah,
the boys together.
The boys.
I see what you mean. There's not like a major like changing of any character and things like that.
Like just to compare it to the remake, for instance. I can't remember any of their names, but you get the redneck kind of guy who's like out for himself and is a bit racist and a bit of a dickhead, and then by the end, he kind of has a bit of a character moment where he's like, you know what, yeah, I'm fucked now, but I'm gonna try and hold them off, and he has that kind of sacrifice, and we get like small little bits of that. However, with this one, it almost feels very real, because that lack of character arc, you just see them surviving and living instead.
They're getting by, and I think it also plays into the idea of normally people will have more character arcs in major ways when they know what they're going towards, what's coming next for them. They're trying to achieve something next. And I'd say these guys are very much in a world where they feel like there is no next.
No, there isn't.
This is it. Like, they're like, we might go to the next one, but there's no point in me really developing much more or doing much more. I can do these things, I can do the day to day, but I'm basically that's part of the part where both the fun and the mundane comes into the film, is the fact when they start to be like, well, this is all the same, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
And this is it. And like, there's no point in me doing much more else, is there? Because they're all kind of in some kind of state of like, they're in the like those 7 stages of like death, basically.
Yeah.
Like they're going through denial and anger, and that's what they're playing out on screen. Like when you get certain different parts, certain characters, like Stephen can't stop looking at the TV screen when it's there and when it's not there.
Yeah.
Because he constantly is waiting and hoping for an answer.
Something.
Things like that, and like Peter can't stop, like basically like he's on constant guard. He's constantly seems to be like scanning for the thing, and Fran just seems to be just constantly like almost like in the middle of all of that. Like, what are you all doing? Like, why is it like I'm kind of like you're protecting me, but at the same time I'm not sure if you are protecting me. Like those kind of like feelings going through it, and then obviously Roger's just kind of Roger's like properly preparing himself to go. So we'll come to that in a second. So I'm just trying to lock back into where we were within that.
So we were talking about the bit where they kind of get the wagon for the supplies, which is quite it takes quite long. We get Stephen finding out about the kind of air ducts and air vent system that they can travel through, which you get. I like that you get that in Dead Rising. That kind of comes back up in there.
Yeah.
And then there's one moment that I find that it's very interesting that they commit to in this film, that they established in Night of the Living Dead, and then it kind of dropped off really, and that's zombies being afraid or backing off from fire. Yeah, and
that's true.
You get the flare, which she uses on the Hare Krishna zombie. You get like the blow torches they're using to keep them off, and in Night of the Living Dead, we get fire as
bonfire.
Someone makes like a bonfire.
Lights out the front, and bits when they flash inside the house and stuff like that keeps them back a little bit. No, I like you saying about the link across the trilogy though. I think it is because in this one, obviously, you start to get the little sign of them almost already. The zombies' intelligence is growing, increasing. And obviously by day you start to get some real signs of obviously increased intelligence within the zombies that they start to understand some tactical thing. Like again, only because I know certain parts of the story, or I know that there are developments within one character specifically. But then some of the others show certain signs, and I know Land of the Dead also had this same because you had them start to have guns and stuff. You know what I mean? So I know that's part of Romero's the idea that they both go from like back, and then they start regaining in some some memory or something that helps them to do these kind of things. And I just wondered whether that's that throughout this film and into the next one starts to kind of go out, because they start to realise that actually no, we can overcome that. Or I've been on fire, I'm still here, like burnt zombie man.
Maybe
I made it. I'm a living proof that you can be dead and survive fire.
They learn that they only need the brain to be smashed up.
Exactly.
What's fire gonna do?
So he's like, I can be fire. I will be a flaming torch that runs around this mall and kills you all.
Torch. But I find that they commit to it. And it's just something I notice, because each time I'm like, it's a very old fashioned thing to have, like you would get monster movies back, or like Dracula or Frankenstein, or even when they had like voodoo zombies, and fire was always something that would keep them back in that. You'd always get like the protagonist using the proper old school torch and keeping zombies away. And it's kind of weird that they commit to it, even this kind of late.
Yeah, because you get. I just think I just more like the zombies. I just think you do get certain ones where they do really. It almost there are some shots where I don't know if it's just the extra not quite going along with it, where it seems like they sometimes react when certain things are pointed towards them or put in front of them. Like the zombies seem to kind of be a bit more like they're not just. Some of them just stand like dead gawking at the gun. Some of them seem like they're almost more a bit like moving around or like
it's
that
really
kind
weird.
of like. So it's an interesting part as to whether some of this stuff is like designed or continuity of like trying to control so many people that it's like. But no, I always like the idea that there are a few fit. Like one of the worst things that a lot of horror films do, to be honest, is when they give them too much. Well, you know, there's too much like plot armor basically. There's even the character themselves is like there's no way that there could possibly anything happen to them. But even with like the monster, sometimes they just make them sound so impossible to kill that you start to be a bit like, oh, what's the point?
Yeah,
like you want them to have some vulnerable ways. You know what I mean? It's like if you had zombies and then you said, right, no, brain doesn't kill them. So you can stab them through the brain, they'll still keep coming. You can cut them up, they'll still keep coming. Some of them do kind of do that sometimes.
I think Return of the Living Dead does that.
Yeah. So like Return of the Living Dead is a little bit like that in that kind of way that basically even down to Ash, it's still not because it can still infect more people.
Yeah.
So that kind of does it, which is great because it works that way. And I haven't watched any of the other ones. You said the other night you were going to watch some of them.
I watched the second one. I watched the third one 2 or 3 years ago. Because I heard that it was done by Brian Yuzna. I think I probably didn't pronounce that right. But you know, he did Society and he did some other kind of kooky films, and it's a completely different film to the first two. It's about one woman who gets infected with the trioxin.
Yeah.
And it's more of like a love story. It's like a horror comedy romance film.
Yeah.
And she gets stronger like when she experiences pain. So it's a really weird film. And I watched the second one a couple of nights ago, which it was fun. I enjoyed it.
I really unexpectedly enjoyed the
Return is awesome.
I thought Return was awesome. We'll do Return at some point.
Will.
But yeah, no, I really liked it. So yeah, it is that. But there was the thought in my head of like, how much further could you go with this? Because you've made them so indestructible. It's almost like if this gets spread to a wider margin, they're going to win. There's no way they're not going to win. Like just like these zombies, obviously. But at least in this case, there feels like there's some fight. But then I guess part of what I love about this film is the fact that at the start of the film, we've already had Night of the Living Dead, and there's already the knowledge of what has happened. But it's just the fact that they're so still unprepared. They're so unplanned and so unprepared.
Yeah.
The whole of the world, and that is the way it would be because, as we know, sadly, like with humanity, the worst thing is the fact that we could give you all the plans. We could tell you exactly how to do it and how to probably survive, but we're fucking assholes. We'll still be like, nah, I don't want it. I'm going to do it my way. You know what I mean? And for every they'll basically be like, they aren't good at doing this. So if the whole world has a zombie attack and they're like, basically, they can crowd up and stuff, but if you're all in the they can't really get through doors and things like that. So if everyone just barricades themselves inside, get yourself supplies, don't eat the supplies.
Yeah.
You know, get these ready. This is going to happen. You can tell people in advance. Do not go out and try and fight them. Don't try and do this and basically stay inside. We wouldn't fucking do it for shit.
No.
I know that there's a point where it's like you'll run out of food, things like that. But if they came round to every house and gave you basically a good supply of food and basically don't eat it, there'll be some guy straight away cans of chili.
Yeah.
Eats the whole fucking lot in
just
one night.
Everything in one night. And then oh shit, I'm here for 3 months and I have no food.
Yeah.
Just does the biggest shit possible.
And then there's some gamer lads who are on fucking Fortnite or on COD or something like that, and just oh fuck it, now I get to live my dream, running out with guns into the streets and blasting and getting eaten the shit out of.
Well,
because they're fucking fails, and that's what the rednecks basically were.
I mean, to be honest, not to throw back and trigger anybody's PTSD, but COVID, man.
Yeah.
Do you remember, lockdown was like that. Lockdown was you could only go out of your house if, if you want to go shopping.
Yeah.
And now everyone's like, oh, you know what I want to do today? I want to go shopping. And then everybody's just leaving the house.
Yeah, I was going to
for
say.
whatever reason
how
they
much,
can.
How much we suppressed that. Remember that whole, like cleanse your hands?
Cleanse your hands,
Constantly cleanse your hands and all these germs and people really like that. And then it's like now everyone's like, nah, just fuck it.
Yeah.
I'll lick my hand if I can
Yeah.
slide it
Yeah.
on your face.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, there's still, and it's like, I mean, it's still out there and, there are even people that are still like, it could still like mutate.
Yeah.
It's still alive. It could still change it could still increase and come back around in some ways. It's like, nah, that's just humanity. We just go like, fuck it. Like all of the lessons that we should have learned.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like all of the things that were like important to the world. Remember all the people that were basically keeping the world running? The people that paid nothing,
Yeah.
basically, or paid like shit, or like jobs where we have to look after people in the social sectors, or children or things like that. Remember how we helped the world running, and all the people that gain all the money in the world didn't really do fuck all.
Didn't do fuck.
Yeah. Remember how now they keep making money and we still get paid fuck all.
Yeah.
And apparently we have to do more now than we did before. Yeah, we don't give a shit because that's what we are. We are humanity. We are a greedy race.
Yeah, well, that's that is just echoed in this film.
It is, yeah. It's This is what makes it timeless because all of that COVID and stuff, like life that we've lived like through that quarantine and stuff like that. This just echoes back to the fact that we just can't fucking control ourselves. If people had plans or had followed rules, like even like we said at the start, them going against militant law and stuff like that. That was probably because it was breaking laws that they were trying to keep people contained in order to protect this, but they weren't handing over bodies, which meant spread.
Yeah.
Which meant it spread, which means the SWAT officers died. And it's just, and again, that is just like fucking like COVID when they said stay inside, don't go and fucking rave at a party till fucking 2 a.m. because of that. And it's like, yeah, but I want to.
What do you not understand about
Don't tell me what to do. Yeah. Those is everything always comes back to. Always Sunny did that so well with the environmental one they did about the bar, where it's like it's too hot. It's like you don't need more shots, but I want more shots.
Yeah.
Don't tell me what to do with my body. Like my body is like, no, but you don't need it, and we don't have the supply. We will run out. Yeah, but I want them now.
Yeah.
You said I can't have them. And it's like that is literally the annoyingness, and it's we're not talking like hypocrites. We probably do stuff every day. It's
of course, man.
It's like protect the earth, recycle. But the recycling bin's over there, and this bin's here.
This bin's here. Like, I gotta, there's a shop that it could take me 10 minutes to walk to. Oh, it's a bit overcast today, and a bit windy. Yeah, I'm just gonna drive there for 30 seconds. It's a bit of a breeze, and I'm wearing shorts.
Drive down there, yeah.
I'm not changing my shorts. I'm gonna drive to the shop. But going back to the film, Roger. So I was under this strange impression because the film is, I find, even though it's 2 hours, 7 minutes, I find it's paced pretty well. And I fell into this, I don't know whether I'd call it a trap or what it is, but I think Roger gets bitten maybe an hour and 15 minutes into it. So I was under the impression, to be honest, especially the first time I watched this, that all 4 of them are going to survive.
Yeah.
So and Roger gets, because they're going to put the trucks to block it.
It's such a small group as well, though.
Yeah, it's small. It's a very small group, and they're getting the trucks and they're blocking up the entrances in, and Roger almost gets bitten like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
and each time you're like,
fuck,
that's it. It's gone. He's fucking gone. My boy's done, and then. He gets away. Someone shoots the zombie. He pulls his foot away. And then you just think, oh, they're not going to do it. They've almost got him 4 or 5 times. And then he's like, shit, I forgot my bag. And he's fucking around the whole time, isn't he? He's having a laugh with it.
Well, that's what I mean. Him and Peter are just like, they seem to literally be loving it. They're like the bad boys.
Yeah, they are bad boys.
They are literally just like, fucking, but Roger a little bit more than, as I said, Peter is a little bit more kind of at times the more guarded one.
Yeah.
So when he does have fun, it's nice. It's nice to see that break because he's the more serious of the two.
He's the Martin Lawrence.
Yeah.
And Roger's the Will Smith.
So he's going out there. Yeah. So obviously Will Smith's the one that would get drastically eaten by zombies.
Yeah, of course.
But then he'd come back as that damn handsome zombie that probably talks smack to you.
Yeah, talk smack to you.
Somehow he's not dead. He's not fully dead.
So
he comes
he's
back
not
and he's
dead,
like,
he's able to
you
override.
can't keep Wild Willie down.
Yeah.
It is a sad one because of the relationship that Peter and Roger build. I think that's the main reason I found it like sad that he's. But obviously, it's then you think whenever that happens to them, you think it's going to happen like really quickly, but it happens kind of over time, like quite slowly, doesn't it?
And I
thought
found it quite funny
because I kind of remember that it obviously had taken a little while to happen. But I thought the zombie bites kind of happened. The change happened fairly quickly. So I was like, what happens to Roger? Because there's one bit when Peter obviously shoots in the other lorry, shoots through and shoots the guy in the head, and then the blood splatters on his face and goes in his mouth. And I was thinking, is that why he changes slowly? Because it's not because he gets bitten, but because he actually he gets the blood, and therefore it gets into his system and things like that. But that's not actually. Then he didn't actually get bitten. I was like, oh, okay. I thought the reason he took so long was because it was like an infection that's building inside your body. Because they have that in 28 Days Later.
They do.
The
Crow's fucking
fantastic.
Class.
With Brendan Gleeson.
Breaks my heart every time, man.
Absolutely amazing, that kind of thing. But again, that's what popped into my head then was that scene. And, Rogers is quite like hard as you see him slowly like breaking down. He still gets some fun before he goes, but...
Well, you get that... You get the scene where Roger is being wheeled around and they're trying to get into a car or something like that, and I find that really funny.
Because they're like going around the shop. They're almost doing like supermarket sweep. Or whatever. Like, hey, let's get all this stuff, gather it all up, like piling it on top of Roger's wheelbarrow body. Like he's just got his leg in the air, and he still seems like he's ill, but he's still quite like happy. And obviously they've got the medicines and the pharmacy and stuff, which it seams helps to kind of subdue in some way. So they keep giving him stuff to help because he is kind of in pain, but it helps balance him out. They kind of live this. That it's weird that the part when Roger goes is also the part when we kind of see this oddly like short time idealistic kind of life. That kind of goes like it's kind of happening. Like they're all living together. They get to access all the different parts of the mall. They seem to be doing stuff together. They're like furnishing their little apartment room that they've made, and it all seems quite like nice. And they actually seem happy for a little while. They're getting this lifestyle, and they've got access to whatever they want, and they feel like they've blocked it off, so they're not worrying about the zombies so much anymore. Yeah,
well, because they say there's a really funny scene, and this hit me the most recent watch. Is basically they say like it's gonna start stinking, and because the zombies are gonna start rotting, so they're like we need to get rid of the bodies. So I was thinking, okay, best thing to do, take them up, throw them off the roof, right? Or burn them, and they're like, no, we'll stick them in the freezer where the food is. It's so fucking funny. There's like ice cream and like meat, and they're just like piling zombies' bodies next to it. It's so funny. But then that's when we get the scene after we get the montage of them like messing around.
And I think the nice thing is that while you get this kind of messing around, though. This is also the point that because they're messing around with a lot, because they start like at some points they get like guns. It's like you have Peter who is on the roof and he's like I think he's like working out and stuff like that, and he's making a lot of noise. And you get basically it's like this is the bubble they're in, and then outside, which they're not realizing, is their impending doom because every noise they're making, you're seeing more zombies just attracted to each other and gather, and you're like, holy shit, like. Because I think that one bit when Peter's on the roof and like whatever he's doing, I can't remember, but whether he's shooting or whether he's doing something that makes a lot of noise, I can't remember what it was. But literally, and then it pans down, really cool shot where it goes from Peter as he like goes through the door, pans down off the roof backwards, and you just see around those lorries are literally just a ton now of zombies.
Just more
going
gathering.
From that little gathering that were originally there to this big crowd that are there. And that is one thing I love about the whole idea of setting this in this kind of place is the fact that it seems like such a big place, and in your mind you think, that's absolutely the kind of place you'd want to head to, like somewhere that's got a lot of supplies. That'll probably for thousands of people every day, so there should be enough to last us for a good even years maybe to keep us going. And just the idea that you could put yourself in this bubble like they are, and they're enjoying this peaceful kind of nice lifestyle. They're not complete. As I said, there are scenes like where Stephen is like flipping through the TV and they're listening to the same guys in the TV studio still talking philosophy. Like
there's one who's got like an Abu Hamza kind of vibe.
He's got like the
eye
he's got an eye patch that looks
eye
like
patch and glasses.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing.
It's an interesting combo.
He kind of reminded me. Yeah, he did remind me of someone very or someone like kind of like a Stanley Kubrick or something like that.
Okay.
Like, always speaking in a very he spoke in a very like that kind of way, like kind of thing. Like this is very much my vision and my idea, but he speaks in a very like. They're back and forth, but it's also the interesting thing is it's two people talking who are not really. It almost feels like they're not actually having a conversation because they're both basically saying their point of view.
Yeah.
The other person says their point of view. It's like a discussion or a debate, yes, but it's where like neither of them's really taking on board what the other is saying, and it just shows that like the world is at a standstill. This is it. Nothing's going any further.
No.
There's no going from here. There's no further going on.
No one's working together.
And then obviously I think you get one of them when you kind of get or a little hint of the idea that came to an end because obviously something's happened in the building and obviously then because you get I think you get something in one of the broadcasts when it cuts off and then the next one you just see Stephen just scrolling like it's got to come like they haven't been in days and like Fran's like it hasn't happened in days like turn it off like it's just driving them mad but obviously that bit follows after Roger that's around the same time that Roger finally passes because it happened it feels like a big build up and that's the thing, it goes from the idealistic to they start seeing that Roger's getting really ill and it kind of brings them back into the reality of the world, I think.
Well, 2 points is we get the 3 actually. So before we get Roger reanimating, we get we get a great scene where Ken Foray's like in that fur coat which you would wear and they're all looking over, the balcony at the zombies because somehow they're still gathering in other parts of the mall maybe and that's when we get the iconic line when there's no more room in hell the dead will walk the earth and one thing I love about the series is we don't find out because you wouldn't like everything would be cut off and everything would be gone that it would just be speculation about why zombies are around.
There is no clear exact reason and all these things are left open even like that TV we don't know what happened. We have no idea because that is it.
It's just gone. You're cut off, man.
You are completely secluded. It is the idea that you send a message out and it's like in many zombie movies and stuff or TV or like The Walking Dead and stuff they have things where like they send out a signal. It's just like no idea. Is anyone ever going to hear this signal? Like I can put it on a loop. Is anyone ever going to hear it? And the people that do hear it like we get later with the biker gang are like noticing them. Do we want them to hear it?
That's it. Do
we want these people to hear it?
The second point is that
I thought that was 3 in 1.
No, not 3 in 1, man. The second point is this film must be the reason why people have conversations about what they would do in a zombie apocalypse because we've had that conversation many times and surely going to a mall or a supermarket is
I think much more than say Night of the Living Dead. This one definitely makes you think much more about where would you actually go? Would you go in the mall? I think and it's been discounted in several of them where I think we had
we did it a lot.
We did this a lot. This was like almost like a strategy game without a board.
Yeah,
like we would literally talk about through the scenarios. I remember like on a Friday night we would have like cans, we'd have a pizzas, or whatever drink we could get hold of because we were still underage. And our main conversation would basically be: so how would you what would you do? What would be your strategy? How could we survive? What would we do right now if basically a Gloucester was basically covered in? Where would we get to? I swear our prevailing one, which the remake kind of makes us reconsider in some ways, but our prevailing one was mainly the idea that we would make ourselves get to the docks in Gloucester and try to take over
a boat.
And it wasn't just it could have been a little a little thingy, a little boat, a little coach boat or a little thing. No, it had to be in Gloucester. They have like real sailing ships. We had to take the sailing ship.
Of course.
The idea that on that ship may be some swords or something like that we could also use as we become pirates.
Yeah,
in this new
we
world.
become swashbucklers
raiding the land. But the idea was basically that we would gather any supplies we could, get on a boat, and then go out to sea because obviously zombies can't be there.
They can't be there.
But at the same time, obviously, Dawn of the Dead kind of taught you that after a while you run out of supplies. Then when you try to get to an island,
it's fucked.
We've got some setting going on with our episode today. I don't know if people can hear it in the background, but not only is the rain come down like fucking crazy right now, but also the storm is a blaring. We got some thunder and lightning.
Yeah,
so
fucking
if you're hearing that noise, we're not adding some like creepy sound to our 100th episode to make it more like that. We're getting real life storm.
Real life atmosphere, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy outside.
Yeah. Well, and then, I mean...
It was literally sunny like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, this is mental. Climate change, king. And then, well, the third point actually goes back to the film, so it brings us back nicely.
Yeah.
And this is, obviously, we get Roger reanimating, which is a great scene. And it's real. I still find it real tense to this day. However, one thing I wasn't sure of, and this is kind of looking at the landscape of zombie films at the time, was the bite contagious? Because in Night of the Living Dead, it's very much, we don't know about somebody being bitten and coming back. The girl at the bottom of the basement, I know she's sick. I can't remember if she's been bitten. It's been a while since I've watched it. But obviously that little girl comes back and then kills the mum.
Yeah.
However, was the zombie bite known to be contagious? You know, because he says, "Don't let me come back."
Yeah.
So I'm never sure. Like, was this a thing? Were people like, if I get bitten, then I
don't know. Back? I mean, I just felt like it was part. I did feel like it in some ways kind of implied that the getting bit or something by the zombie is what, because when they're in the apartment building, when one of them gets bitten and stuff like that, I swear there's some reference to the fact that like don't let them touch you and things like that.
Yeah.
So
maybe it was.
I feel like it was, but that's why I was under. To be fair, that was why part of it went in my head is like, was it the bite or was it the blood that got into his system from the zombie that is actually what made him? It's only because Roger kind of, not only did he change, but he changes quite differently than the other zombies, and he even looks significantly different than some.
Do you reckon?
Well, he like a lot of them, like the Kristner and stuff like that. He doesn't look a lot of the zombies don't look all wrinkled and warm, but he's literally like wrinkled and
wrinkled.
Aged,
I just don't think he's that good a looking man.
He's not a good looking man, but no, he does not like the form he takes in. He looks like his whole skin has like been dehydrated.
Yeah,
like his whole skin looks like he's sick. He looks significantly like
he looks very
sickly, journey to go there, but. It's an interesting point because you don't really see it play. Like, I know that they don't change. We do see it in obviously Night of the Living Dead with the little girl that she changes.
Yeah.
She doesn't change obviously like that, but we know that it did take her a while because she was downstairs for the majority of the time.
Yeah.
She'd already been. I feel like they do say she got bitten or attacked by something. And
maybe
that's why she's downstairs because she's been ill.
Well, she's sick.
Or she's sick. So that's the thing. Is it an infection or is it something that gets passed on? And that again. So is it the bite or is it the blood?
Yeah.
In this case, but we know later on in these films, it's definitely a bite that is there.
Yeah, the bite is the one that.
And that's obviously classic zombie, but again, I don't know if is that Romero who made that, or does that come from somewhere else? Because obviously he didn't actually necessarily make the undead. You know, that was something that was already there, and obviously, technically even Dracula plays into a form of something.
Yeah,
some of the creatures in Dracula are like the living undead.
Yeah, but they were more like I said earlier, the voodoo.
But the idea of a zombie is very much Romero. It's very much more his kind of like that, even though. Is it Romero or is it Argento? Because Argento is the one that used the term zombie, and they don't use the term zombie in Night of the Living Dead.
They use ghouls, don't they?
Yeah, I swear that they don't call them a zombie. And do they call them a zombie in this one? It's interesting because we refer to Romero as the creator quite often of the zombie, and it's interesting. It was interesting just like reading about that about Argento, because I was just like in my head going, I was like, how much did Argento actually like could have possibly helped or add things, and does that mean that Argento naming the film in Europe zombie. I always thought I heard that Romero was kind of the zombie, the one that kind of coined the term, but I was kind of wondering where that...
Well, I mean, I'm reading it's it's an old word, from the 17th century. So the word itself is very old.
Yeah.
But I don't know when they ever actually
within
call
like
them
the films,
zombies.
like taking that word and applying it to the living undead in that way.
Because I'm sure they do. I'm sure in Day of the Dead they call them zombies.
Yeah, I think so. I just can't remember if they said
it's
it.
It's a cool word as well, zombie.
It is. The zombie.
You fucking zombie.
It is a cool word.
It's weird as fuck when you actually think about it. Like
Yeah.
a word beginning with Z. How many do you know of?
Do you want me to list them?
List a few.
Your head always just goes to zoo or zebra.
Zoo or zebra,
Xylophone.
That's XY, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, yeah, I
You've
got that
been
right.
done.
There's my teacher.
Yeah, it's just...
I fail. I must now resign.
Yeah, you must now resign.
I spelled that right.
Post
That is
haste.
xylophone. Yeah, I'm taking the Z when it's XY.
You got.
I got
It's
got.
just a weird... Like, when I
Yeah.
actually think about it, it's just a really fucking weird
You don't come
word.
across many Z words now.
No, you don't.
There's not like a... Get a dictionary.
Yeah, get it.
We will now spend the next hour teaching
Listing
you all
Z
of the
words.
Z words.
But it's such a word that's like in pop, like pop culture and just general life. Like if you say zombie, somebody knows what you're on about. Somebody knows what you're on about. And if you like think about like Resident Evil and stuff like that, and if you play video games growing up,
Yeah.
just everybody's so familiar with zombie.
Yeah.
And as a concept, it's kind of from Romero. So when you look at his impact on horror and filmmaking, it's just absolutely incredible.
It is, yeah. As I said, that's why he's seen as the master, because I think he's the one that not only brought obviously them into the more of the mainstream in many ways, but also I think, and that's why he's the one that gave them a real interesting perspective on them.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of ways in which you can see them boring, and there's lots of people who've done zombie films that are boring.
Yeah,
because they don't understand what makes them interesting. They don't understand that sometimes the worst part about it is the loss of humanity, and some of them lose that idea. Whereas Romero is very much one about the loss of innocence, the loss of humanity, the loss of society, and he brings all of that together to make these really interesting kind of films that have much more of a context. And also it's the fact that, think about this film, like, yes, you've got loads of you've got zombie attacks, you've got plenty of that in there, and yet if you watch the main part of the film, it's more about the humans than it is all about the zombies, and they're in the background. And there are some of them that focus far too much on thinking about there has to be a constant array of zombies instead of thinking, how do we flesh out and make sure that actually it's the humans trying to find the way to survive that makes these stories interesting.
Yeah.
That has always made these stories interesting, and it's not necessarily about the fact that they're running away from a zombie. That's not the interesting part. Yes, that plays into it, and when that comes into it, it's fantastic. Like in a moment when we start to get the real kind of climactic kind of battle of the biker gang, but the loss with Roger, like I said before, is the real low point as well for all of the people living there. So when Roger gets shot, and obviously then they have to bury him, like literally in the middle of the mall in in that little plant area. That's when you really see that they're kind of at an all-time low. But that's also then followed by the dinner scene where they Peter himself is trying to push to bring be that guiding force. He's trying to kind of keep them going by helping with Stephen to kind of give them a moment of normality.
That's the thing that strikes
seems so horrific.
And trying to have normality and a sense of romance in a world where those things don't really matter anymore. But that humanity of wanting to cling on to the positive things in life, because the film could have just been, nah, fuck it, we're just going to try and survive, and we're just going to do that. But adding in those character moments, because Fran is under the impression that Peter's got to be joining them, but then he's like, no, this is just for you two. And it is, it's a real, and it's not a scene which is massively played out. Like, they don't, they have a little bit of a talk about getting married or engaged or something.
Yeah.
Because he gets some rings, and she's like, there's no point, man.
Yeah,
you know, which is a bit which you get, but
because you get obviously it's both a point of like they're getting a little moment of joy, and then you get obviously Peter outside kind of sharing a drink with Roger's grave.
Yeah,
like kind of like showing like that he's still like very much there on his mind kind of thing.
Yeah,
but then obviously it's the fact that we get this like high, but every high is followed by a very quick low.
Yeah,
like basically Peter and Fran do the sex.
They fuck.
And I believe we saw before that the Goblin soundtrack, the Goblin
songs.
Is
not
that
Peter.
Not Goblin? Not Peter.
Stephen.
Sorry, I just changed the story.
He just fucks her instead.
Peter just walks in midway through the mill. We do the fuck.
Stephen's in the cuck chair. Just watching.
Roger told me we do the. You can fuck off, Steve. No, sorry. Stephen and Fran have the sex.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was talking about the soundtrack where we were trying to say about like the Goblin. So he used very, the Italian, used in a lot of the.
A lot of Argento films,
and that's played also. And one of the tracks is they're kind of peppered in a little bit. They're much more, as we said in the Argento version.
Yeah,
there's one. Wasn't there one that was literally called like the sex? Or something?
There's a zombie sexy.
Yeah, zombie sexy or something like that. And I think that plays out between the meal into the down of basically they've just had sex and they both look so depressed.
Yeah,
they look so like. Almost like, what was the point in even doing any of this?
The post-nut clarity of like, well, they didn't fix anything. Like, they're still fucked.
That didn't do much. Like, the world didn't get better just by us fucking.
Yeah. Like, all the zombies will go, nah, they fucked. Let's go home, boys.
Yeah. It's game over.
It's game over.
And obviously, I guess the pregnancy plays a large part of that kind of additional for Fran, because it just seems like, what's the point? Like, bringing a child into a world where it's like this. Like what's that kind of point of like that? It's like it should be a point of like happiness, but I think a lot of them do get those moments where they're like, there's no real reason for any of this.
Yeah.
But they try to push through because then they obviously they do think about the future because they start thinking about the helicopter and loading it up and getting supplies.
Yeah.
And Stephen and Fran starts to teach Fran how to use it in case he's dead and things like that. So there is a little bit of. It gets to a very low following Rogers, but then they do start to try and be like, we have to do something.
Yeah.
We've got to keep going, and we can't stay in this. This has been a bubble of joy that's now burst, and we need to go on from here. Which is good timing, because that's when they make, with the helicopter and stuff, they start to make it, and with the zombies building up all around the outside, it kind of makes them a big flag of like, oh, let's go there.
There's people there, there's stuff there.
And here comes Tom Savini's biker gang.
Yeah, Tom Savini and the biker boys.
Yeah.
Which is it's so good, because you get the scene where they're talking over like CB radio or something like that.
The biker gang part to me felt like this makes it feel so like of its time though, like the whole 70s. Like this felt so like some people would even say like there is a little bit of the biker gang part that almost feels oddly like out of place in this kind of like, even like the rednecks from earlier like felt like they felt, but it being specifically like this like odd biker gang that's been on the road, and they seem to be out there just to kind of hunt down and fucking they like the enjoyment of finding supplies,
just looting,
but just looting and fucking killing zombies as they go. They seem to be loving it. They're loving life. It's you'd almost literally expect Tom Savini's little dick gun from
Sex
Machine to pop out.
Yeah,
him just to start rubbing that dick gun. He seems that excited about what's about to happen.
But I love it that they're like, how many of you are there, and then it's effectively like things were kind of okay until human greed rears its ugly head, and we're just like, back off, we're fucking it up. Yeah. We're going in there, we're taking
They blast it, they destroy the barriers, they break, they get all of the stuff, there's lorries and stuff that like blasted out of the way and shit like that. It's like, in we come, baby.
And you think, would they have been able to kind of survive if they just let the bikers steal stuff and go?
Yeah.
That's the impression. And then Peter's like, I'm not letting them, don't, this is ours, we're not letting them take it. And then he shoots them, which alerts them, I think.
But no, Stephen shoots.
Stephen, that's it, sorry. I always confuse them.
This is part of the little bit of the, like, with Stephen, what I said earlier, it was a bit like he was so, like, preoccupied, obviously, because Fran's pregnant, and so I think that's why he's so, like, he's become so territorial of their space, but also he's also just been taught how to shoot and things like that. And he gets a little bit too suddenly like, I can do this now, and he thinks the best way to deal with this, which Peter is like, that's fucking stupid, is basically he goes blasting.
Yeah.
I get out my gun and I start blasting, and because he starts blasting at the biker gang, I think he even hits one of them, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And that's like, right, the fight. Well, we know you're here now.
It's a war.
Like Peter, I think was much more. We need to take a hold back stance from this. Like they're in here, but we need to try and.
Well, we're hidden behind this wall thing we've built.
And it's a big place. We're like blocked away. Yeah. Like they might come and they might go.
We can outlast.
But Steven's just too like gun ho straight away, like and fucks it all up, and then and then it literally is a case of it's all over there, but then they also start to realise not only are there tons of zombies outside that are now also getting in, but there are already tons of zombies actually inside that have just been hanging around the bottom, which the bikers don't quite realise. Yeah. So some of the bikers get overwhelmed by some of that, and it just starts to become a fucking whole for all of like they're shooting at them, but they're also shooting at the zombies, and we get a more war.
Well, we get real interesting scenes because we see the biker gang rampaging around. They even like rob an old woman zombie of like all of her jewelry, which I was creasing at.
Yeah.
And we get them like cream pie. We don't get them cream pieing zombies. There's a different context in 2023 than it does in 1978. We get them
good old American cream pie.
Good old American cream pie, Frank Reynolds style. Yeah. We get them putting pies of cream in the zombies' faces and spraying them with this like foam and stuff that. And proper playing with them. And for me, it draws parallels to it's the exact opposite of how people were treating them at the start when they were like, well, there's respect there. Maybe these people will come around. And now the bikers are like, well, we're just degrading these things. They mention about cannibalism. Abu Hamza lookalike mentions about cannibalism, saying it can't be cannibalism because that implies one species feeding on another species, the same species. However, these things aren't human, so it can't be cannibalism. They're not like us. They need to be destroyed. And it's an interesting juxtaposition between how these three people or how these three communities treat the undead, because you're thinking these used to be human, and somebody else's like family member as a zombie, bash its fucking skull in. But if it was like your family member, or if it was somebody you knew who was zombified, it would be quite tricky to not only like put them down, but if you saw somebody just like playing around with it, you'd be like, that was a human being who like had emotions and lived, you know. And now you're like putting
I'm just
pies of cream. I keep wanting to say cream pie in them.
I think the reason obviously that it's like a biker gang or kind of a like a hippie-ish kind of gang, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think is very obviously timely of like the idea of like the 60s and 70s, like the rebellious kind of like. But also then painting the picture of it went from like rebellious in like a good like fight for the right kind of way, and that did slightly get to the point where these kind of were also seen as like the low lives of like society, where they took it from rebel to looting and thievery, and they were seen like biker gangs at that point were very much seen like your gangsters or your like they were seen as that kind of bad. So that's why they're here, because they're just like. They're people that don't give a shit about what society says. That's going to be the point of them. So that's why they're these guys just coming in and they're like going after nuns and zombies and stuff like that. You know, being them, like there's that one nun zombie in there, isn't there? That, that Romero said he didn't want to die, so she just gets to wander out. Yeah, she just literally just like go out and like she's a. It was like apparently he felt it was wrong to like in the script it said to like basically like bash the skull in of like a nun zombie. But he was like, we can't do that, can we? Let it just let it just hobble out. So they just kind of go past her.
I'm trying to think of if there's any other kind of great moments in that, because it switches quite quickly from them having fun and messing around with these zombies to them then being brutalized. Like it almost seems as if like they're taking their eye off the ball, they're having fun with them. Tom Savini like machetes one's head, and then we get like Tom Savini gets shot and obviously like jumps off the first floor, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But then we get like somebody gets held down and ripped apart.
Paralysed him. Because they had boxes.
Yeah,
again, because they didn't have any budget, and there was like almost no health and safety or anything like this on this film, because there was no like they didn't really have to report to any like studio or anything like that, so there was no like there wasn't even like like normally they'd have like things like dailies that they'd have to send across, like to like shoot. They didn't have any of those, so Romero had no idea what this film looked like because he couldn't look back at the dailies. They were just sent straight over to like New York to be processed or whatever, and like. Savini did that like jumping off scene, and he was meant to land on the box, and he landed on some, but not all. And had a proper like impact into the ground, and like even his his partner, who was his friend, who was the other one who was doing a lot of the stunt stuff, like he like mashed up his leg. I think on one of the the escalator, going up sliding down the banister of one of the escalators, and he fucked up his leg, and like. It was stuff like they were literally like I think I saw like in a documentary that said reflecting on it like we probably could have died about 10 times a day. Like we were just fucking throwing everything at the wall and hoping something would look fantastic, like really like a lot to do, kind of thing. But yeah, it's that mixture between I think when obviously Stephen and that's try to kind of fight as they start to get closer and they sort of try to fight back and they get shot obviously. And then that's when Savini's goes, the rest of them take their eye off because they're like, oh shit, what? And then that's when the zombies are like, oh, we're still here.
And there's so many, isn't there?
Yeah. So you get like the one dude who literally gets like dragged to the ground and gets his guts pulled open.
Which
and,
is awesome.
Like his arms and legs are kind of being held down by the zombies as they like start to bite into them. And his, that's a classic that has been like reused in so many horror films.
It is so good.
But I think that's like the first main one of seeing that kind of proper gut rip like they did in Shaun of the Dead or something. You know what I mean? Like that awesome. My
favourite is the guy who during all of this stops to do his blood pressure.
Oh yeah,
he just does his blood pressure and then gets ganked. Like his arm gets ripped off and then he just gets like eaten. And like I think his other arm gets ripped off. But it's just great, and there's a classic scene where where two of them are fleeing, and one's in like one's on a motorcycle, and one's like a sidecar.
In the sidecar,
with the Tommy gun, and he gets shot. He doesn't react to getting shot and falling out, and they're all behind him, and then they swarm him. And it's so good.
It's so cool. So that's when it all starts to kind of go to shit because obviously they've been starting to get attacked by them. And then Steven
dies
in the elevator.
He gets shot.
Gets shot.
It looks really painful as well. That one.
Yeah, because he gets shot in the elevator. Then obviously the zombies. There are two of them in there with him, and he's trying to fight them off, and he fails.
Well, he gets shot, and then he climbs back down, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I'm not sure why he climbs back down. I can't remember. But then as he tries to climb up, they notice him. One bites his leg, and then he has a fight with them.
And he gets bitten. I think he gets bitten around the neck as well.
Yeah, he gets brutalised, and then Ken Foray's having to.
He's in this moment of, do I go to help because he might still be okay, or do I go to get Fran? Like, should I just go?
Yeah.
Or do I go? And obviously he goes to go back, and
I think as soon as he hears the scream and the shot, he knows that it's too late. And it's kind of heartbreaking that.
And they have to block stuff in, and then obviously you get him appear in the door, and he breaks through as if there's and it's another one of those signs of like the memory that Romero adds into it, because he's walking along and then goes specifically to the door that was to there.
Yeah, we get the great shot of the lift opening.
Oh yeah.
And Peter now zombified, and then doing his cool funky zombie walk.
And it's cool because the ones that get to do that is quite nice for like the actors, that they get to do a range of different things within the film, and that's one of the because he does that so convincingly, going from Stephen to Zombie Stephen.
Yeah.
And he looks really effective, and it works really well. His whole movement, his body's stiffened up, his stance in that classic kind of zombie walk that we'd see. But yeah, I really like the fact that he kind of returns to the room, and it's like a memory that's
like instinct, and that's the first thing he does. The first thing he does is he gathers the boys.
But it's kind of it's perspective in that. But then it's also, he was so protective of Fran that in my mind I kept thinking he's returning because somewhere in his instinct is to return to protect Fran.
Maybe.
So he returns at the door, and then obviously Peter's like, well, bang.
Yeah, he gathers the boys, and he's like, come on, I know where they're at. and then they have that weird, like the sheet protector they've constructed to look like the wall, which is quite clever.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, if they'd have just hid up there, the biker gang probably wouldn't have noticed, and maybe would have moved on.
I was going to say, they probably would have only looted the shops and stuff. They probably wouldn't have gone much further than that. They didn't look like they were planning to stay.
No.
So, yeah, it is one of those, like, if you just stayed back, and I think that's part of why Stephen's the one to go, because Stephen's the one that partially is the reason why it gets so bad with the biker. And you can't kill Ken for it.
No, you can't.
Because he had to live on in order to become Keenan and Cal's dad.
Yes, he does. This is all set in the same universe.
This is the prequel, yeah. One did assume the zombies were destroyed and taken in a big battle, yeah.
Yeah, well, they never don't mention it, so it could be set in like a land of the dead where they have the city where there are no zombies. You know, it could be set in that, and in the very last episode, you just see a zombie at the door, you know?
I mean, but at the same time in my head now, because you know what, Peter definitely, he raises that white baby of Stephen's, but he also gives a good pipe into Fran.
Oh, of course he does, man. He pipes.
Fran and Bert, that's what they do now. She just...
He's just a consolation
she
pipe,
upgraded,
you know,
like,
yeah, he's like, I'm sorry, let's have a fun. Do you want a bit? You know, like, I'm sorry, Stephen was a good man, let's have a bit. You know, as soon as we touch ground. Well, then we get the ending, which is basically the zombies have found their way upstairs. They need to fucking get out of town. And it's really interesting because Fran goes up to start the helicopter.
Yeah.
And
Peter isn't going to leave.
Well, Peter's like, no, I need to stay here. And it's almost like Peter understands that the world is fucked. Yeah. He is a soldier, and his whole mission is fight, you know? So he decides, I'm going to stay here. And then he goes
shot
to
where you think he's basically going to kill himself or something like that, which is... Again, it's odd, but it seems like he's contemplating like suicide or something.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute, because then he is like, he has a change of heart.
Yeah,
and we get like a real like, it reminded me of something that you would hear in like a western when the good guy's winning, because like the soundtrack I don't think that's Goblin, that's somebody else doing that. I think
adding in a kind of Magnificent Seven. Sacrifice myself.
Yeah, uplifting. I'm fighting back.
He does seem like a character I think that's the nice way they play it, because he does seem like a character the whole film that you think he's going to be the one to sacrifice himself.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like he's not like, because I always felt like there was odd like Romero was making some comparison with obviously of the original Night of the Living Dead, which also has a black male protagonist. Now I'm not saying he's the protagonist. I know that the actor's name was Dwayne Jones or something like that, but I can't remember actually what the character is called.
No,
Ben?
Mate. Yeah, Ben.
It's Ben. Ben in the original. I feel like there's an odd, like, to be honest, there's even a bit of a like look that like as if he wanted someone to have that kind of like resemblance between them. But it's interesting the way that in the original, obviously, they're both the kind of the guard, the protector. They're both in many ways that take on that kind of role of being like that. And you think about even in the original, Ben's the one that would kind of looks like he's thrown into it, but by the end he's pretty much there to try his hardest to keep everyone alive, and it doesn't completely work. Yeah. So I guess it's the flip of the original, where sadly Ben dies not by his own choice, but still by trying to protect and survive. So you think that Peter's going to go the same way. Yeah. Obviously, it doesn't. It defies the expectation of where you think it's going.
Yeah, because then he battles his way up.
Yeah,
he gets in the helicopter because the zombies also go up the ladder, which is interesting. Yeah, because they open doors and go in ladders, so maybe they start.
So it does. So like some of them develop, and it is hard to keep. That's what we said like obviously earlier. It's hard to keep track of whether some of these were continuity or they were just kind of like basically like actors were doing things in like okay, we'll just go with it. Yeah, you could do that. This is part of the lore now of zombies. Like they can climb up ladders. Yeah, they can open that hatch. Or they can push their way through that door.
Yeah, they can do it.
Yeah, they can do it. Yeah.
And then obviously when they're in the helicopter, we get it's a great last two lines, and Peter asks, "How much fuel do we have?" Yeah. And Fran just replies, "Not much." Yeah. And then they fly off, and it's so bleak.
Leaves that bleak ending. I mean, that's to be expected for these films. Night of the Living Dead has a bleak ass ending. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just a total like, oh yeah, they've made it through. Ben's made it through the night. Oh,
yeah,
he hasn't.
No, he's fucked. I remember Day of the Dead having a relatively bleak ending as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. I might watch it in the next couple of days.
I think all of them have a bleak. Yeah, I will. I do. I am gonna. My plan was now to finally watch Day of the Dead, so I can say I'll probably go through the rest of them. I can't say I'm excited to watch Diary of the Dead, but
I remember thinking Diary of the Dead was okay, not great, but it was passable. And then Survival of the Dead was really bad. Survival of the Dead.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I watched it. Well, I fucking love these films, so I watched it, and I was
forgot there was even another one. I thought Diary was the last one.
No, Survival of the Dead is basically like set on a small island where you have two farms, and they don't get on, and somebody gets bitten and comes to the island, and zombies break out. But it's very bad, and it's very low quality, that you kind of watch it and you're like, is this Romero? Did he use his lunch money to make it?
He must have been very old by that point.
I think he was old, and I don't know why he particularly made it, because it has that made for TV quality to it, which is quite sad to watch, to be honest, when you compare it to the rest of the films. Even Land of the Dead.
The end kind of
the
thing,
end of it, you know.
I do think it is sad that he continued to go that way, and I don't know, maybe that's the only options he had as a director, but
maybe
even for me, part of me thinks that, I feel like Day of the Dead, from the sound of what I've heard of how good, how well it's received kind of thing, it should have been the last.
Yeah, probably should have, man.
He should have ended on a trilogy instead of trying to keep pushing with it for films that just... I just know that for Land and Diary, and I guess Survival as well, but all of the people were just the cutting social commentary, the perspective on the world. There's a certain point, I think, maybe when anyone uses it, and any director doesn't have that keen eye anymore, because they're not as on the pulse with that part of this, that part of society, that generation, things like that, and they're just not there anymore. They're not the ones to take that stance.
Yeah.
And I think that part of that is definitely where maybe he kind of was out of his generational perspective anymore.
Yeah, potentially.
And that's why people say that those ones just don't have the same commentary that kind of hits or doesn't hit in the right way, or it starts to feel a bit more like a zombie film that sadly is now outdated, and it's been reinvented in a more interesting way. He reinvented them, but now someone else has taken...
And he's trying to play catch up.
He really was. He'd got to that point in the end, he'd made Day, and then there was obviously a big gap between him making another one from Day to, to Land.
Yeah.
And, in that time, I'd say the main culprit is probably 28 Days Later.
28 Days Later.
He just reinvented zombies in a way that just made it different. So then when he tried to come along with Land following even Dawn of the Dead remake, it just started to seem a bit... And then Diary just seemed like it was going with a fad.
Yeah, it pretty much was.
And that's the problem. It suddenly felt like the person who'd led the way was now trailing behind and trying to do something to catch up. And it's a sad commentary on where these things go, and it's not just him. It's happened with several directors where they've gone from these, these influential, everyone looks up to this director, to then sadly they're now trailing behind because they're just not quite on the, peak with it.
Yeah, you have to put him on silent, man. He's so popular that everybody's messaging you. But going to the film, then after they fly away, we get the credits, and we get the gonk song as we see the zombies just fill the mall.
Love it. It gets stuck in your head so much. Try not have that get stuck.
I know, it's so in my head as well.
Yeah, it just gets stuck.
Now, the reason I mention about Peter going to commit suicide is because the original screenplay ended with Peter committing suicide in that room, and then Fran stepping out and putting her head in the helicopter blades, killing herself.
I have heard this before,
and then the credits would have been just a look at the helicopter, and then the blades running out, implying that they wouldn't have gotten far had they gotten there anyway, because they would have just had no fuel and crashed. It's super bleak, and so they ended up rewriting it, and that's why a lot of the ending shots
it's hard to
still
say.
had that in place.
It's hard to say because it is a bleak ending, but I will say there's definitely one thing that I do feel that for me, Night of the Living Dead is one of the most impactful endings.
Yeah.
I just think it hits so hard. It's one of the best endings of all time.
Yeah.
Like, not just horror, just generally. It's one of the best
incredible.
film ending ever made. So there is a little bit with Dawn of the Dead where it's just like, it feels like that little bit. But then that sounds like it maybe would have been too much. Like it's trying too hard to have that same effect of like, everything's bleak, we kill ourselves. But then I guess the ending we got is maybe just a little bit away from feeling that like slight bleakness. I do like the idea that we're going to run out. It leaves it on that cushion. So it does it in the right way, because you can't recreate like the ending that came with the original Night was it worked, but you can't keep redoing it.
No,
you can't make it again and again. You can't have them get to the roof and then they get like something happens or they die. Or, you know, I mean, you can't, and it doesn't hit in the same way because the original had more of the racist kind of undertone.
Yeah,
you know, it had more of that kind of the time of the 60s and that kind of part played into it, which was now we're into a slightly different era. Not that wasn't still there, but
yeah,
you know, they were looking at different areas of society and things like that, and how it affects humans in that kind of way. So the suicide part would have been interesting, especially as you've got Fran as a pregnant woman.
Yeah,
you know, that's interesting with the blades, and I have heard that version before. I don't know whether I'd prefer it or not prefer it.
Yeah,
it's that way. I kind of want to know what it would look like.
Yeah.
But yeah, you wonder how much Fran would have gone, how much they would have actually gone for it. Fran, like, would you have seen something, or would it have just been like, you just see a step up and then like a body drop or something like that?
Well, apparently the zombie that gets its head blown up by the really racist police officer, soldier, whatever, that was supposed to be it. That her head was supposed to pop like that.
Oh, so
however,
they reused it in a different way.
They reused it, they remodeled it, and then put that shot in there. Just, I guess you've got the prop, you might as well use it. So it would have been very full on, and seeing it would have been a bit like, oh fucking hell. But I like the idea that like, you know that they're safe for now.
Yeah,
and it's very much like,
but yeah,
the days are
we don't know
basically.
how far they're going to get.
Yeah,
I was going to say take it to the next level, they just fly off and it's crashed.
Yeah, they just
up and drops back down and bang.
Up and just pop. Yeah. Well, I'm going to take it over to the social media lounge because we got a couple of things.
Got to be some loving for Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah. So obviously we put up the film that we're talking about over on our Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. So today we got Stu World Order, who said, absolute great movie that is entertaining and has a really strong thematic message. I also live minutes from the mall it was filmed in, and until COVID started, used to get lunch there every day, which is
badass.
Which is pretty interesting. Going there, and then Scatterbrain Podcast said, this is one of my favourite movies. It's the movie that kicked off my love of the zombie genre. Some read into the social commentary, but as a kid, this was just fun with cool music. And then they also said, congratulations on reaching this milestone. It takes a lot of time and effort to get there. And yes, it does. So thank you. So we got a couple for it. Yeah. So we got a couple.
Yeah, no, that's it is such, and I like the comment about the fact that it's we are reading into it is in a kind of social because that kind of plays into how we can like look into it a little bit deeper and things like that. And the thing is, it's nice that that's there, but yes, this film could absolutely be taken as just the level of like, this is just a fun zombie. Some people end up at a mall and they go, you know, they have to just survive, and then they get attacked, and that it all goes to shit. And it absolutely is just a fun, enjoyable like zombie ride. I think like a lot of Romero stuff can be just taken on that level. You don't need to like. Yes, I said like some of them drop in the social commentary and don't seem quite as keen or cutting edge or anything like that. Doesn't mean that they can't still be fun, and they are still at the end of the day a zombie horror film. And those kind of always feel like they should be fun. If you get too far into the other way with it, you get too obsessed with the dark and the depression, the depressing part of it. You know, some of that's another way zombie films can sometimes become a bit like, oh, well, this is just, you think you're being more interesting than you really are. You know, I think you mentioned one like on one of our controversial ones where you it lives at night or something.
Yeah, it comes at night.
It comes at night. that was within the genre, but it was taking it in a more of a thinking it was more interesting than it was about his perspective on it. But that's the thing. These Romero films, Night of the Living Dead, is it's a suspenseful, quite slow. But I can watch that film again and again because I just find it so entertaining and it's so easy to watch. So it doesn't bog you down. That doesn't mean that it's not extremely clever with the social commentary and political context and things like that it puts in it.
Yeah,
like that adds an extra layer, which means that. But that is also what makes it both something that's accessible by mainstream, but also it means that you picky ass critics out there can like pick it apart and be like, this is I accept this is a good film because it's talked about something it talks about racism, or it talks about it talks about humanity, or things like that's okay then. It wasn't just a fun, entertaining film. Like films are designed to be.
Yeah, and that's it. Like down to its core, even if you're not particularly one to read into films or analyze them, it's fun, and I always forget how fun it is. Like it does have a fun soundtrack, and I know Goblin did it, which is why I was surprised that music was kept in.
Yeah.
Although if Argento was editing it, that kind of makes perfect sense.
Just, yeah.
I can imagine him being like, "Wow."
Argento did the European cut of it. He didn't do the main cut.
But even
Goblin's,
the main cut.
Goblin's like in this, but there is another soundtrack with it, isn't there? There's a score that goes.
There's a score, but there are like, there's definitely one Goblin soundtrack.
Oh yes, there's definitely the when we listen to the Goblin parts that you were playing before, they're scattered in there throughout. Yeah. I think they're played in. There are lots of little parts of them in scenes. I think just the whole of the music gets more fully played in Argento's cut, whereas in this version they've done more of a score mixed in with then Goblin's bit, which is why some people say that the soundtrack is a bit odd and a bit erratic at times.
Which I get.
But I mean, I really like it. I like
both
sides.
I fucking love it.
It's a great soundtrack. It works really nicely. It adds some good like suspense at times, but it also adds some odd fun at times.
Yeah.
And the Gong song's amazing.
The Gong song's great. Day of the Dead has a fucking banging soundtrack. It's done by John Harrison. I think two of the songs are quite frequently in my on repeat because they're so good. It kind of moves away from like the band elements that are in this and goes a lot more to like electronic and synthy.
Yeah.
But like the soundtrack, 80s babies. But it's a banging soundtrack, and I prefer it to the soundtrack in this one. Do you have anything else to add? We've talked quite a bit about it.
I mean, not really. It's we've said how much we enjoy it, how much we love this film. One thing I like is this is a late 70s film that doesn't end in just freeze frame.
Yes.
I was half expecting them to just get to the helicopter and it's freeze.
Yeah.
The end. Let's have cop procedure, because that's what we keep finding. And even our next episode, which is Cujo,
yeah.
That has a freeze frame.
It does.
So I'm quite happy to see these kind of. It's nice to see that come about. But in terms of the film, it's a fantastic film. I think it's it's something I knew that we were both going to love. It's something we'd rate highly, and that's why we chose it for our 100th episode.
Yeah,
that's why we decided to go big with this bad boy and think about a film that we both knew we were going to really enjoy and love, and it's got a little deeper, and a film that we can just talk about. And I'm sure there's much more we can talk about. It's the same reason we've talked about the fact that we're considering basically talking about different cuts of the film, even though you'd be talking about basically the same film. But yeah, if we don't talk about it in a full episode, we'll definitely come back around and say like things we notice about Argento and even the director's cut.
Yeah.
Slowly, I don't know if I have seen all three cuts, but I want to watch all just to see what is the differences between them.
I haven't seen the Argento cut, but I'm going to find it now.
Yeah.
And I think what I might do is I might watch Day of the Dead and then the Tom Savini remake of Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah,
that's a good one as well.
I've watched that. I didn't really like that.
Really?
One. No, I found it oddly off. I found the structure a bit off. I found he tried to add humour. Maybe it's just because I like Night of the Living Dead so much. I felt like it was just something that couldn't be. I don't think I've ever seen any Night of the Living Dead that's been done well that catches like the original. I think probably, like, I do love Dawn of the Dead, but I actually still think Night of the Living Dead is my favourite by far. I just love I quite like the bleak tone of it, to be honest.
Okay.
I just find it's just structured. I think it's just like almost perfect film.
No.
It's like a perfect horror film.
Yeah.
Like, whereas this one I love, but there are still a few structural things that are like, yeah, they're great, but they just don't hit as hard for me as Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead made me really love horror, horror and zombie films.
Yeah.
It's one of my first ones where I watched it and I was just hooked watching it on TV. So yeah, I think for me, you mentioned about maybe Day is maybe your top, but for me I think the first, his original Night of the Living Dead. I know there's some hokey bits and some bits that you're like Barbara, but I don't know. Once it fully gets into it, and once you really get the protagonist Ben and things like that, and that ending is just it's amazing.
Well, I think you're gonna have to watch Day and let me know.
Yeah, I will watch Day and I will see. I'm sure I will enjoy Day, and I will get back to you and all of you.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good way to wrap up our 100th episode. Again, we want to thank everybody for sticking with us as we've rambled and ranted and gone on mad tangents through 100 episodes. We really do appreciate everybody liking, subscribing, and giving all the good feedback. Come and let us know your thoughts on Dawn of the Dead, and on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at CMTH Podcast. Please remember to hit that subscribe button, and please leave us a lovely review. And we will see you next week as we crack into our first episode, working towards our 200th episode. So take care. Bye bye.